Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem.
Ensure,
We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossiers. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth. And that will begin shortly. And I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me in. He said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we question everything. We have no agenda, and we seek the truth together. Welcome to the big show. We've got a very busy show for you on this Wednesday. We're going to look at the CIA and the UFO bombshell that is continuing to evolve this afternoon as we're getting more and more information as to what exactly the CIA knows, the secret UFO program that they have been at the center of, the downed craft, which are apparently being held at certain military bases in the United States, specifically U.S. Air Force bases. We're going to dive deeply into that story tonight with one of the co-authors of the bombshell story from the Daily Mail, Christopher Sharp, in just a few moments.
Plus, we are going to bring you the story about the expanding industrial censorship, I can't say it. Censorship industrial complex from new expose by journalist Michael Schellenberger that proves how the government not only continues to censor Americans online, but has been trying to find a way to take bank accounts for people that it accuses of disfavored narratives. That's terrifying. Okay. We're going to take a look at that, plus a new plan from the United Nations to ask the West to eat less meat. Plus, is King Charles the racist we've been looking for? All of those stories and more as Redacted starts right now.
Welcome in, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday night. Hope everyone's doing well wherever you are around the world. Let us know where you're joining us from as we're live here Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Yes, we are live. For those of you that are wondering, are we live? Yes, we are. It's 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And I think I meant to decorate the studio today, but I did not get around to that.
We have not decked the halls yet.
No, we gotta do that.
You'll just have to see whenever that happens.
Gonna dial it up. Although you are wearing the festive Santa colors tonight.
I am.
Which is nice for the
I look like
show.
a candy cane.
Mm-hmm.
You know where you are? I'll take it from here.
I'll just get a little distracted.
We want to let you know that we have a newsletter that is a companion piece to this show. You can find it at redacted.inc. Now, you may know when you come to the Redacted show, you get about 4 to 5 stories. A lot of those stories we write about in the morning newsletter that should come to you in the morning, depending on where you live. So you can read up on those stories. You can dive deeper. We try really hard to make sure you have original links to the sources of those stories so that you can form your own opinion. We absolutely do not require that you agree with us on any of our takes about anything. We want you to find out for yourself, as Morrissey said. So you can find that at redacted.inc. You put in your email address. It's free. The whole newsletter is free, the whole shebang. We don't give you part of it and then ask you to pay to get more of it. It's free. The show's free. There are other ways you can support us, but by watching and reading our content, that's not it. You're here. You're doing your part. So thank you so much for that. I think you won't regret subscribing to the Redacted newsletter. So please do it. Again, that's redacted.inc for our newsletter, redacted.inc.
Well, the internet has exploded over the past few hours over a new report in the Daily Mail from multiple CIA whistleblowers. Those CIA whistleblowers are revealing for the first time that for decades, the CIA has played a central role in collecting alien spacecraft. The CIA has an office called the Office of Global Access, and they have collected at least 9 non-human craft, 2 of which are completely intact. Christopher Sharp is one of the authors of the story in the Daily Mail. He is also the editor-in-chief of Liberation Times, and he joins me now. And Chris, first of all, I just got to say, great reporting on this story. The work that you and your co-authors have done on this has opened up quite a few can of worms. Amazing work. Multiple highly credible sources have now come forward and confirmed your reporting on this. So you've really let the cat out of the bag, Chris. Great work.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on as well, Clayton. Yes, I mean, so this process started in the summer when I was doing research around the Office of Global Access and JSOC. I was doing research and had spoken to a few people about a possible crash retrieval program relating to craft of unknown or non-human origin. And it seemed that these places were very, very well suited to such a program. For instance, a source told us, as it turns out, JSOC's counter proliferation capabilities and those of the agency are also perfectly suited for this type of mission, with specific expertise and security compartmentalization already built in. So the Office of Global Access is within the CIA, and that's within its Directorate of Science and Technology. So those are the guys you go to if you need access to a foreign country to retrieve some hazardous material. It could be a nuclear weapon, or it could be a foreign craft or some type. So those are the guys who get you the access. And then they work with JSOC, which is the Joint Special Operations Command. So they oversee Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and some of the other special operations units. And from my understanding, these units, such as Delta Force, for example, have expertise in counter-proliferation. So when you're dealing with potential non-human craft with radiological material, they're perfectly suited to such things. So yeah, so I started doing the research, and I started speaking out to some sources in the know, and the feedback was like, wow, you've hit upon something here. It was very difficult getting quotes, even anonymously at first. We were getting corroboration. I brought my co-author, Matt Ford, on board, who had other very, very well-placed sources. And we went through an exercise of going through our sources, gathering information, getting corroboration, taking out anything that may be inaccurate. And then we thought, well, actually, we need more sources to provide quotations. We need a little bit more meat to the bone. So that's when I approached my colleague at the Daily Mail, Josh Boswell. And Josh then did his own corroboration on whether the story was accurate. He got back the same messages as us, that it was accurate. And he managed to get some more information. He managed to get some more quotations. And this is where we're left today with this story. It seems like we found a program.
We found a program. And I think for a lot of us, we've always thought that the CIA must be involved in this, right? But now we have confirmation of this from the CIA itself, confirming that the CIA is at the heart of this. And it makes sense, as you point out in your story. The compartmentalization, the secrecy with which the CIA operates is perfect for them to run off the books, black ops, stuff that doesn't come out of the traditional budget. As Tim Burchett pointed out yesterday in an interview with Tucker Carlson, he said that the Pentagon has failed its 6th audit in a row. 50% of their funding is unaccounted for. 50%. Imagine running a business like that. So the CIA was perfectly situated to be running these programs. And just talk about that secrecy and where they store these craft. Do we know where they're storing these craft that they have?
So the questions we should ask ourselves are things like, okay, are the CIA stations and mission centers across the globe, are they involved with the transportation of materials to contractors? I think that's a good question to ask. And if so, which contractors are they going to? From my understanding, they are basically, they're getting them out of their hands as quickly as possible, so the paper trail is thin. And I think we should be asking questions. We should be asking questions of the deputy director and former deputy directors or assistant directors of national intelligence for acquisition, technology, and facilities. But basically, that's the term for acquiring technology and storing technology. So what do they know? It's funny as well, because you've got someone called Dawn Mayericks. She is the former assistant director of national intelligence, to the same place, national intelligence for acquisition, technology, and facilities. And she was the deputy director of CIA for science and technology, which is where the Office of Global Access falls under. So you have to ask yourself a question. Are they cooperating? Have the Arrows spoken to people like Dawn, for instance? Have other UAP investigations spoke to her? And if so, is she cooperating? Is she answering the questions that they're asking her? I think what you're finding is that they are trying to evade oversight, and it's very, very concerning. And look, I think a lot of people as well were saying, well, we don't know if to trust this story. It's using anonymous sources. That's fine. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to trust Josh. You don't have to trust Matt. Speak to the politicians. They can corroborate it with their own sources that they trust.
Right. Call a committee hearing, demand answers. But right now, what's happening in Congress is they're getting stonewalled. And the UFO Disclosure Act looks like it might be dead. Who knows if it's going to be dead or watered down? And there are certain members of Congress who stand to benefit from the military-industrial complex, who make a lot of money from the military-industrial complex, who are looking like they're trying to stonewall the UFO Disclosure Act. And so, yeah, members of Congress can be asking these questions. We can be calling members of the CIA in front of Congress and demanding answers about these off-the-books programs, and trying to find out more information, transparency for the American people. But it appears they really want to keep this hidden from the American people, the amount of money. To me, it sounds like a criminal organization. It sounds like there are massive crimes being covered up here. Is that how you read it?
Isn't it crazy that you have democratic representatives whose job it is to provide oversight on behalf of the electorate, and they're basically saying, no, we don't want more oversight. We don't want more transparency. Like, are we this living in a backwards world here when that kind of stuff happens? And you have to ask yourself in terms of, Mike Turner, he represents Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Okay, so NASIC is partially based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So you have to ask yourself, are there any potential conflicts of interest, especially when it relates to this story? Are there facilities within Wright-Patterson Air Force Base relating to acquiring foreign technologies and potentially reverse engineering them? So do you have those conflicts of interest? I mean, that's a good question to ask. I'd also point out as well, something also which wasn't in the story. There's two aspects to mention as well. So firstly,
yeah, I wanted to point out. So you and I were texting before the show, and you said, Clayton, there's some new information that's come out. New information that we didn't have when we first hit publish on this story. Further confirmation. Can you go into some of that? Just wanted to set the stage for our audience here.
Sure. So just to clarify, this is actually information that we had in the original story, single sourced information in terms of one piece of information, and then multi-sourced in another piece of information, which I'll get down to. So the first thing was that I was hearing that the US Air Force's first Special Operations Component Maintenance Squadron is involved in a potential transportation of such materials. Now, that's based in Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, which is the exact facility that representatives were denied access to a few months ago, including Representative Luna and Representative Burchett, because someone from that base, a pilot, saying that they had seen UAP over the Gulf of Mexico. So I think that's really, really interesting, definitely, and something to explore and to investigate further and see if you can corroborate with other sources.
I just want to point out, because your audio kind of clipped there for a second, but I want to make sure our audience understands that. So there's a pilot who saw something out of Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Members of Congress went to try to go there. They were told they're not allowed to go there. They're not allowed to see what they have there. And this is where this Air Force Special Operations information you're getting, operations, is coming out of Eglin Air Force Base.
Yeah, it just so happens it's coincidental that this unit is also based there, which I find quite interesting. And then the other thing as well, I mean, we kept on hearing a story about, so the way it works from our understanding is that it's very, very dependent on where special operations units are in the world. So if a SEAL team, for instance, happens to be near a location of a crashed or landed craft, they'll be sent out there because they'll be the closest unit. And we kept on hearing a story about a SEAL team that was sent out to a site of an alleged crashed non-human craft. And at first, they thought it was some kind of like Star Wars secret technology. But then they started to get the impression that actually this was not human, that this was a non-human craft. And then, from my understanding, different people within that unit started getting very, very concerned that they didn't have cover and that this was potentially illegal. And this is a good time to point out that if these allegations are correct and that you do have special operations units involved in retrievals, we should not demonize them because a lot of them may not simply know what they're involved with. I just think we need further investigations into this, and I think Congress should be taking this seriously. As I said, they can seek corroboration with other sources, and we should investigate these allegations.
You know, there are plenty of reports that we've covered here on this show that these are not, these craft are not from another planet currently, that they have been here for thousands of years, and that we've been in contact with them for a very, very long amount of time. And the U.S. government is complicit and absolutely knows that this is the case. What are you seeing in your reporting to confirm or deny that these are not just flying in last week, but they are here? They are in ocean bases. They are in Antarctic bases. They are right before our eyes, and they've been here for a very long time.
Yeah, they are here from my understanding, and that's why I'm hearing from multiple sources. And on some occasions, they're cloaked as well. And from my understanding, the US government has ways to actually detect them, even when they're cloaked. And as I said, these are allegations. I think that we should be taking them seriously because they're coming from very, very senior intelligence and defense officials. And they're all saying the same thing. So either you've got all these very, very well-educated, experienced, very, very senior intelligence and defense officials trusted with the most classified information in your government, briefing senior members of Congress and the White House. So either they've all gone mad, they've all gone completely crazy or being misled, or they're telling the truth. Whatever way you look at it, this is a big story.
Right. It's not a distraction at all. This is arguably one of the biggest stories of all time, and we should absolutely be looking at it. We should actually be asking the questions, why is the U.S. government hiding it from us? Why are governments hiding it from us? Certain governments are more transparent than others, but the United States government clearly wants to keep this secret, and to me, it's criminal. It's criminal. U.S. taxpayers are funding this. We demand answers. We demand to know how this is being operated, where these are being kept, who is behind it, and who stands to make money off of it. We would do that in any sort of a court trial. We would want to know why certain members of Congress are trying to cover things up. Well, in their own backyard, they have a branch of the U.S. military that's telling them, don't go look there. You can't look there. And they're taking money from these people. And this in the military industrial complex. It's a criminal organization that's unfolding right before our eyes. Chris, any final thoughts on this? I did want to ask one final question here, which is I heard journalist Ross Coulthart say he 100% agreed with your reporting. He wanted to add one thing, which was he had heard that it's even more than 9 craft that the CIA has in their possession. Nine craft, I think maybe is what you confirmed, but there are reports that it's perhaps far more than that. What do you say to that number of 9?
Yeah, so the source that Josh spoke to on that said at least 9. So the key...
At least 9.
At least, yeah. So that came from one of those sources. I think Josh could provide greater context into that, yeah.
Well, I would encourage our audience, have an open mind about it. Read the reports and read this Daily Mail report from Chris and his co-authors. I think it's amazing work, and we're just starting to really scratch the surface. I think 2023 has been a very important year for disclosure. So, Chris, great job on this. Keep us abreast as you continue to peel this criminal onion apart, and we will feature it here on the show.
Thank you so much, Clayton.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. And thanks to the tens of thousands of you watching right now on Rumble and the tens of thousands of you watching on YouTube and all across Twitter, and all of you. Thank you guys for your feedback. And I always love, watching the feedback here live as we're talking to guests about this subject. And some people say complete BS with no attribution as to what part of that the CIA is involved, that the CIA is not involved, that all of these high-profile members of the military have come out, pilots, like highly respected pilots. What part of it, when you say, is BS? I'm just curious about that. Let us know in the chat, or if you think that this is the next stage before disclosure. Let us know your thoughts on that.
Or is that what you want to believe, and for why? What reason?
I'm just curious, and I really am just curious about it.
Right.
I think Tucker did a great show last night with Congressman Tim Burchett. By the way, so I had reports about Congressman Burchett before Tucker's show last night that members of Congress are trying to go after him to try to primary him in Tennessee because they don't want him to get this story out there. They don't want the UFO Disclosure Act to go through, so they're trying to primary him. And he confirmed last night on Tucker's show that, in fact, yes, it's either Mike Rogers or Mike Turner in the House that are trying to actively keep him from winning a re-election and really trying to put up a primary candidate against him. So whatever he's onto, as Tucker pointed out, whatever he's onto and exposing in Congressman Mike Turner's backyard there in Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, people should start really digging into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Well, some of the things that he said specifically on that episode were that if these technologies exist, then it would make the military-industrial complex obsolete, and the warmongers who keep us in endless wars would not be able to do that. There'd be no profit in it for them. And so that obviously hits at the bottom of it pulls the rug out from under most politicians who are funded by the industrial complex of war.
Yeah, and
so
Mike Turner specifically.
That's an extremely dangerous thing to say, and he specifically has voted 3 times against funding the war in Ukraine.
Right. I mean, just look at what's being hidden at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that's in Mike Turner's backyard. So that should raise all sorts of eyebrows in Dayton, Ohio there. What is actually being held there? What's being held at Eglin Air Force Base, by the way, as well. It'd be really interesting for people to dive more deeply into that.
And that brings up the idea, though, of the catastrophic disclosure. You know, like, what do they think? Like, if the sooner they let this out, because I mean, what's going to come out if they've had this like free energy for 50, 60 years, and we've been living the way we have, going to the wars we have, like, what do they think the people are going to do? Like, you're just going to be like, oh, you scamps, you've been sitting on free energy for this whole time. You know, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, the medical care.
Yeah, I mean, if they have this technology, then they have done, like, I mean, that's far beyond any war crime, just for the length they've had it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So they have 0-point energy. They have this technology that they've been keeping from us, and they are keeping it so that they can make billions of dollars off of it. And the military-industrial complex that has $1 trillion budget. I mean, U.S. taxpayers footing the bill for this. It's absolutely scandalous. And so we should all be angry about it, and we should all demand answers about it and why the Pentagon is trying to, once again, hide this information. So we'll continue to watch it, and I will continue to stay on it because I think it's one of the most important stories of our time. Yeah, we'll stay on it.
We are. So that was the military-industrial complex. We're going to move on over to the censorship industrial complex with more proof of how the United States government has been using taxpayer dollars and federal agencies to censor you on the internet, also toying with the idea of taking your bank account away if you are guilty of what they call a disfavored narrative. Couple guesses what you think are a random list of disfavored narratives. We'll look at that as well. We're going to look at a UN plan to ask the West to eat less meat. They're couching this under the guise of environmentalists. We're also going to talk about the racist royal that's been revealed. Why do we give a crap about that? It's funny because we've done a couple of royal stories where we're just looking at power structures and power narratives. The reason we want to talk about the royals is because I think that this is such a race baiting story that's worth talking about, not because I give a fart about the royals. Well, that's not true. I do really like the crown. So, but not because I'm trying to change this slowly but surely into any kind of celebrity gossip rag, in case you were wondering.
All right.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see that story.
All right. So, but first we want to tell you about our friends over at Indeed, because the thing about running your own business is every single hire counts, and no hiring partner understands that like Indeed. So don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, well, Indeed's U.S. data shows that over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates that you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply for your job than candidates who just search for it themselves. That's according to U.S. Indeed data. Indeed does the hard work for you. You sponsor a job and boom, you get the candidate whose resume on Indeed fits your description. So Indeed knows that you have to make every dollar count. That's why you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows hiring needs to be cost effective when you're running your own business, so you can not afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/redacted to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/redacted. One more time, that's Indeed.com/redacted to support the sponsors that support this show. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everybody. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Well, yes, the government is censoring you, and yes, they know that it's wrong. And in fact, they are hiring agencies that have experimented with the idea of taking your bank account if you are talking about the narratives that they don't like. This is not new, but this is a new revelation from journalist Michael Schellenberger and his partners over at Public. It's what they're calling the CTIL files. That stands for Cyber Threat Intelligence League. So I'm going to try and call it the CTIL files, even though that does not roll off the tongue. Here is his big expose that was released just this week. He claims that these revelations are even worse than the Facebook and Twitter files, which were bad enough. Now, all of this is coming from a whistleblower. He only gives us a slow drip of it. So we don't get actually a lot of these training videos and things like that, but he summarizes it. So let's go through it because the media is pretty silent about all of this. It just makes me wonder every time. I think the Twitter files were huge. I think the Facebook files were huge. We had concrete evidence that the government downranks and punishes people for talking against the narrative that they promote, even for saying true things and for saying things we should have the freedom to say. So I think that's shocking. I have not ceased to be shocking, even though the Twitter files started coming out in December. So I've had a year to be shocked, and I'm just as shocked. Okay? Join me in being outraged that this is happening because it's a First Amendment violation. But it makes me wonder, if Edward Snowden were to release his documents today, do you think the media would treat it like this, radio silence? Do you think Snowden would have got the media today had he, I mean, it's been 10 years since.
It's, you know, it's hard to say because we had last year, we had these CIA revelations.
Yeah.
And as Glenn Greenwald lamented, those sort of came and went. Wait a minute. We're learning arguably as big a story as the NSA story last year when the CIA, racket unfolded and we learned what the CIA was doing to the American people. And that kind of came and went. It kind of came and then just disappeared.
Yeah.
Are we so desensitized? We're just like, fine, they're invading everything that we do now. They're watching everything that we do. They're manipulating us, blocking our bank accounts. They've taken control of dams and power infrastructure and utility companies, and we're fine with that. Like, we're just fine with that now.
I think it would have been treated just like the Biden laptop story. Like, I think that, the publishers wouldn't have published it the way that they did. And I think that anything that was online, they would have made it sound like propaganda and covered it up. I don't think it would have ever gotten the way that it did when it was released.
Yeah, I think the NSA story, the Edward Snowden story would just be like a Twitter files, and it would kind of live for a week, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we also have, as a population, we have Stockholm syndrome with this stuff. Half the population seems to be like, no, we like this. We like this censorship. They're keeping us safe. We want them surveilling us. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right. I also think the media was not complicit in the way the NSA was spying on the population. They had no role in that. But with the things that have been censored through government agencies, the media has been complicit. We're going to see exactly why in calling these disfavored narratives crazy. So the media is in bed with downranking these types of stories, these types of reports. They've been complicit. So if they now are covering the fact that the government is censoring these types of topics, it would be a tacit admission that they did it too. So I think that that's why their silence is so loud and unacceptable. But we're going to talk about it because I think it's important. So it is yet further proof that the government has been grabbing power that it should not have to censor. So what do we know? Well, a whistleblower told the team over at Public that they worked for this CTIL and that they were doing censorship work on behalf of the government. It was not just COVID. The report says that this was born in 2016. He says it was a reaction to Brexit and Trump, which some call it Trumpexit. I'm going to call it that because I think it's funny. Here is the gist of what the marching orders were, saying the whistleblowers' documents describe everything from the genesis of modern digital censorship programs to the role of the military and intelligence agencies, partnerships with civil society organizations and media, commercial media, and the use of sock puppet accounts and other offensive techniques. One of the documents said, lock your shit down, your spy disguise. So you're going to go online as somebody else and infiltrate these groups and see what these wrong narratives are so that we can go and knock them out. Another said that this was typically done by the CIA and the NSA, but they had to go through these sort of workarounds because these censorship efforts they knew were against Americans instead of things that they had just techniques they had developed to spy on other non-Americans for security reasons. So they knew that they needed these partners because they did not have the legal authority. Now, this whistleblower says that at this CTI League, a former British intelligence analyst was in the room at the Obama White House in 2017 when she received the instructions to counter disinformation to stop a repeat of 2016. So what does that mean? Let's keep looking at that for a little bit longer. What does that mean, that Obama was there or just at the Obama White House? We're not quite sure. I don't think we can defer. What we do know is that it was the outgoing Obama administration, it would seem, that was upset about Trump being elected, and wanted to make sure that something like that never happened. Now, as someone who, I don't mind telling you, I was upset when Trump was elected in 2016. And at the time, I sort of bought into Hillary Clinton's idea that Trump voters were this uneducated basket of deplorables. It was an elitist way to feel. But that's how I felt at the time. I'm embarrassed and I've apologized for that. But there was this movement amongst people who thought like this, that, oh, we are educated, but Trump voters are not. So we need to educate them on why they should not have voted for this guy. I'm embarrassed to even say it, but that's sort of like, that was the sentiment, right? Around all of these like women's empowerment. I was a part of this Facebook group called Pantsuit Nation, all about like Hillary Clinton wearing pantsuits and how like we were empowered by her. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that now because she's a murderer.
She's a demon.
Like she's a murderer in a pantsuit, right?
Yeah.
But this was the way that I was a part of this. So if you had asked me then if those people, these basket of deplorables should be censored, I probably would have said yes. So you can see how fast this idea of like, you know, these people think this way, they're uneducated and we need to like stop them from talking in an uneducated way, how that goes like so fast to censorship. I don't feel like that anymore.
Well, a bunch of people in our chat say, Natalie, I thought the same way back then.
Okay.
Bing Bo Biddy says, I forgive you, Natalie. And you educated yourself. Very good.
Right. I think that it's important to understand like how this narrative, you know, was presented and how someone can then sort of read their way out of it and realize, well, that's a classist way to feel. Well, actually, you know, that's not true. And if you talk to these voters, there's a completely different way that you missed. And also, it is their right to feel this way, whether I like it or not. So, yes, I've come a long way. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to point out Brandon Straka, who's been on the show a couple times. He admitted to crying when Hillary Clinton lost, and he started a whole movement called Walk Away, where it's people who were in the same boat as you back then and who have walked away from that way of thinking. And it's a huge movement.
Yeah, I cried for days about it as well. Okay, where are we? So we're talking about censorship and how I can sort of see where that would have come from. But it's very clear to me that it's your right to disagree with me. And it's your right to say so on the internet, on a postcard, writing it on chalk in front of your house. That should absolutely be your right. So this is what the government did, though, is decide this is wrong think. We don't like it. It's not their right. Let's go and downrank it, have these people punished, and see if we can otherwise infiltrate these groups in order to make sure that this speech doesn't happen. This is why they used non-government organizations, or NGOs. Some of these organizations are names we've seen before in the Twitter files and the Facebook files. Here's what some of these think tank groups that they had to use in order to indirectly communicate. They say, Michael Schellenberger says that a large trove of documents, including strategy documents, training videos, presentations, and internal messages, reveal that in 2019, U.S. and UK military and intelligence contractors, led by a former defense researcher, Sarah Jane, or S.J. Terp, developed the sweeping censorship framework. These are the partners that partnered with the CISA in the spring of 2020. Now, the CISA is the Department of Homeland Security's branch. We're going to talk a lot about this S.J. Terp because she seems to be at the helm of a lot of these orders to do bad things. So what they're saying is that they were censoring what we would call wrong think, but here's how they put it. Heavy focus on stopping disfavored narratives, not just wrong facts. Now, we know Mark Zuckerberg admitted that they've been asked to downrank and censor even true information. We saw in the Twitter files with Twitter employees happily messaging each other saying, this is true, but let's still censor it because the government wants us to. We know that misinformation has nothing to do with facts. Nothing. It's only about things that they don't want you to see. It talks about how they started tracking this disfavored content, and if we could just put that last one back on the screen, some of this disfavored content was anti-lockdown narratives. That's interesting, right? This organization did research on individuals even who were posting with these hashtags. So if you had put something like free CA, which is free California, like get us out of lockdowns, then you earned yourself a little spot on their list for them to see who you are. And then they would work with social media to take you down. Says this went far beyond censorship. The documents show that they were in an offensive operation. So basically psychological operations. They were disguising themselves, creating fake accounts so that they called them sock puppet accounts, so that they could infiltrate private groups and control the conversation there too. So if you're on, like, say, a private Signal group or a private WhatsApp group that you have to get in by a moderator letting you in so that you can talk about certain things, they would say the right words to get in there, and they would work undercover to see what kind of stuff you guys are talking about, and then either track you, figure out, who you are and what you're up to, or change the conversation somehow. Now, do we know for sure that CTIL was working with the government? Well, here's what we do know about that. The whistleblower says that they were recruited to participate through monthly cybersecurity meetings hosted by the Department of Homeland Security. He said the FBI didn't comment, CISA didn't comment, this TERP and CTIL leaders, they didn't comment. But one person who, sounds kind of like an idiot that I confess that I was in 2016, said, all I can comment is that I joined this league, which is unaffiliated with any government organizations, because I wanted to combat the inject bleach nonsense online during COVID. I can assure you that we had nothing to do with the government, though. I'm sure that person's nice and not uppity at all. And then there is this one person who was actively involved in all of these meetings who had a DHS account and was definitely a government employee. Now, the whistleblower also said that this lady Terp She said the goal was to become a part of the federal government, and you got bonuses if you did that. All of these people were involved. It talks about, and if you look at the bottom half of this screen, it says that they were working with this AMITT with about a $1 to $2 billion funding in government tax money. So that's your money. And so, they all worked together to work on this censorship framework. At one point, this woman Terp, who is running this organization, says that she can't even believe, let's go to the next screen. She says, we're working in the background here. But she said she expressed her own apparent surprise that she would ever use such tactics developed by foreign nationals against American citizens. Like, wow, we're really violating their freedoms, right? I never thought I'd be doing this to Americans, but we have to, because they're wrong, because they're deplorables. According to the whistleblower, roughly 12 to 20 active people working with CTIL were FBI or CISA. Now, they even went so far as to get people unbanked with what they thought was disfavored narratives. It says that it called for training influencers to spread the message and calls for trying to get banks to cut off financial services to individuals who organized rallies or events. Well, that's interesting. Where have we seen that before? Organizers of disfavored narrative events getting their bank accounts cut off. That does sound familiar, Justin Trudeau.
That sounds familiar, January 6th.
Yeah.
We had somebody in our chat tonight just said, we cover bank accounts being shut down. Someone in our chat just said they had their bank account shut down. And they said, you guys were right. Redacted was right. Yeah, there you go. So someone just had their bank account shut down. Yeah. I don't know. Other people are saying, I don't know what kind of lists I'm on. Other people are saying, yeah, this is happening. And we've had a lot of people, we've had guests on our show who've had their bank accounts shut down just for their political speech.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, now we know where this came from and why they, it's not accidental. We also have seen FBI documents showing that Christians have been unbanked. We reported on those documents recently. So all this to say, they are doing this. They are deciding what can be upranked or downranked. They're putting people on lists. They're asking social media to punish these people, downrank them, or shadow ban them. And they're all doing this under the guise of misinformation. I've said this many times. Even if you use the word misinformation or disinformation about your life's work, that is terrifying and inappropriate mind control. You should let people have all information and decide what information they want to talk about, even if you don't like it. Even if you are, like me, a reformed elitist, you should absolutely come around to the idea that everybody should get the right to speak as long as it is not actually inciting violence, which these words about COVID lockdowns were not. So there will be a congressional hearing about this on Thursday, featuring Matt Taibbi, once again, Michael Schellenberger, and Rapa Subramanya, this journalist from the Free Press. So we'll see if they have more about this whistleblower. I hope that there's a lot here. It's worth tuning in to and watching it, and we'll watch it as well. So let us know what you think. And there was a comment here about this sort of elitist attitude that I am admitting to, saying, well, you look down on anyone that has a callus on their hands. That's not it. It's not elitist and, upper class or anything like that. It just was this idea that we see played out in the media, and I think that's why I find myself a bit uniquely qualified to dismantle it in the work that I do right now, because I understand how these people who think this way may think that they're well-intentioned, and then like, oh, but we're going to educate these people with a callus on their hand. And I apologize for that as well. And I have many times, but yeah, I think it's important to let you know, this arc of realization that comes from a reformed liberal.
There's also a big piece of this story. I was speaking with journalist Whitney Webb about this, and she's taken some umbrage with Michael Schellenberger's reporting on this. She thinks that it's reductive. We're going to speak to journalist Whitney Webb on this tomorrow here on the show, because she thinks that Schellenberger conveniently leaves out a big piece of the Israeli side of this, the IDF connection to this. and the IDF-linked cybersecurity group that, in fact, has been claiming to be doing pro bono work at U.S. hospitals. In fact, in her report, she reported on this 3 years ago. So she's sort of like, hey, been covering this now for 3 years. I guess this is sort of a bombshell, but she points out that this CTI League has offered its services to sectors entirely unrelated to healthcare systems, companies and institutions. For instance, they now offer their services to critical infrastructure systems throughout the United States, including dams and nuclear reactors, chemical plants. So these are the people that you want running these things. There's no oversight regarding these, who can become a member of this. And you have to be basically approved and vetted to be a part of this. But this is the Israeli Defense Forces backed and connected to this cybersecurity group. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper tomorrow with Whitney Webb on this Schellenberger report.
Interesting. I wonder, because he's closely connected to Barry Weiss, who has been very pro-Israel, very anti-ceasefire since the October 7th attacks, and how maybe that piece is just creating...
I always find, he's an amazing journalist. I just find that it's very interesting that pieces, certain, like a very specific, very important piece of the story is just left out. So we're going to hear from Whitney Webb on that piece of the story to show you we're going to cover all angles of it. And we have no agenda. We're going to cover it and not leave that piece of the story out tomorrow here on the show with Whitney Webb. It's great to have her back. It's been too long. So she's an amazing journalist, and we will have her here. We've got a lot more news to get to here on your Wednesday. We're going to look at how the United Nations wants you to stop eating meat. Will you stop eating meat? I won't. David, that's the only thing he eats. So there's no way that that's going to work.
Pry it out of my hot cast iron.
Your cold, dead cast iron pan. No way. So would you guys agree to the United Nations to reduce meat eating? When the science shows the exact opposite of their intentions and what it actually does for the environment. That's their whole goal, of course. We're also going to look at Trudeau doubling down on helping Ukraine. And of course, wants the Ukrainian people to get money from Canada, and he wants the Canadian people to pony up cash. We'll talk about that angle on tonight's show as well. But first, we're going to tell you about our friends over at BioOptimizers, because they're having a big Black Friday sale, which continues through the rest of the month. So you've got how many more days in November?
2.
2? Are you sure?
Well, today and tomorrow.
Today and tomorrow.
Okay, so there's only 30 days. 30 days in. Okay. So you've got just a few more days here to take advantage of this big Black Friday sale. And BioOptimizers their big sale is happening now. It will last through the end of November. Because this mega deal is available only for our listeners, you have to go to our link there on the screen, biooptimizers.com/redacted. If you want a better night's sleep, calmer, healthier night's sleep, I'm telling you, you will thank us because of their magnesium breakthrough product from BioOptimizers. It's a game changer. Like if you toss and turn, can't get to sleep. My mom has this problem until when she came to visit, I gave her some of this, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I slept like a baby," because she's always up thinking and her mind's running with stuff. And this will put you right to sleep and nicely, calmly, naturally with these essential magnesium. You're in for an incredible upgrade. Magnesium supports a balanced inflammatory response, promotes healthy restorative sleep, relaxation, calmness, and better stress response. So right now, choose healthy over unnecessary things for this holiday season. You don't need junk. Head on over to biooptimizers.com/redacted. Enter the code redacted at checkout, and you can get some advantage here right now with this special link for their Black Friday sale and save a bunch of money right now. biooptimizers.com/redacted. Let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. I saw, let's see, South Africa. Mona DTW says Clayton is in his 40s. Yes, I am 46. Natalie,
that's not a question.
I know.
She's just stating it as a fact.
I just wanted you to know.
But you're reading it as if she's shocked by it.
I know. I do look like a... What is that supposed to mean?
You look like a spring chicken, honey.
Like I'm supposed to be sick.
She might have been reminding you because of your advanced age that maybe you had forgotten. So she was just, Clayton, you're in your 40s.
Son of a bitch.
We're both in our 40s.
Yeah, she's 45. I'm 46. People can't believe you're 45. People are like, oh, he's 46? Yeah, I see that. She's 45? Really? No, they think you're like 22.
That's nice, darling. You don't have to flatter.
Texas is in the house. Good to see you, Texas. Who else? Let me put on my old man spectacles to see here. Let's see here. Cape
Carlisle,
Cod.
England.
Carlisle, England.
Denmark.
France. Drink beer, says Lenny. I eat meat. Nice glasses, Clayton. Thank you. Arkansas is in the house. Moscow is in the house. James Bond from Moscow.
Hey, we met another Redacted viewer on our travels over the Thanksgiving holiday. We were in Austria. We met a nice man named Peter. He, again, told us in front of our kids that we are unsafe for doing what we do. That's the second person when we're traveling with our family that says, wow, how are you still alive? Was the first one.
We were in London and a guy came and he said, Clayton, well, I love Redacted. And he said, I'm surprised you're still alive.
And my mother-in-law was like,
yeah, my mother-in-law. And then my kids were there like, Daddy, what is he talking about?
The second person this last week was like, we love your show. You need to be really careful.
Yeah.
What you're doing is unsafe.
We're surprised you're still alive.
So if you want to say this to us, if you see us in person, please say that, but you're fine to say that, but maybe whisper it when the kids are around.
Yeah. When my 7-year-old's like, Mommy, what does he mean about we're lucky you're still alive? Doing this show, we love doing the show. We think it's really important. And the culmination of many, many years of journalism for us, me having worked at Fox News, Natalie working at CBS News, the San Francisco Chronicle as a writer and as a broadcaster, and me 20 years in broadcast journalism, finishing out in Fox News for the last 10 years of my life. Before leaving and going independent and realizing that we have a platform that we can provide that is free of the constraints of billionaires telling us what to say, the corporate media, and to be able to do this show is a blessing, to be able to seek the truth together on any subject. We don't have an agenda, right wing, left wing. I don't give a rat's ass. I think both of these parties are corrupt. I think the Republicans are corrupt, and I think the Democrats are corrupt, and I say it publicly right here on the show. So we have no agenda, and I think we get deplatformed very often, and YouTube has blocked us multiple times. To do this type of show is not favorable to these platforms, especially YouTube. They do not like it. Facebook doesn't like it.
Somebody just pointed out, whose mother-in-law was it? Because I said it was my mother-in-law, and you said it was yours.
Oh, both mother-in-laws were there.
We're not, yeah.
Whose mother-in-law was there that night?
It was your mom, honey.
Oh, it was my mom. Okay.
She's not your mother-in-law. He does this all the time. He introduces his own mother as his mother-in-law. I'm like, honey, that's your mom. Oh,
wait a minute.
Okay.
You are his sister then.
No.
No, I'm one of these people, though. I find it very difficult to the family tree thing throws me off. Like, I know my mom and my dad, but wait,
She's your mother.
That's a nephew. A nephew is the daughter of an aunt.
You don't use that. You don't use that for your own mom. You got to get right.
I just point to people.
That lady.
That lady.
There's my mother-in-law. She's your mother, and I'm not your mother, your wife. Okay.
That's why I don't leave the house.
All right. Anyway.
But we got more news to get to. All right, let's
don't
talk
tell me
about
I'm
this.
going to die in front of my kids. And thank you for saying hello, Peter. I loved seeing it.
Yeah, Peter was an amazing person.
Yeah,
yes.
we love seeing Redacted viewers. So, okay, let's get to more news. A lot of fooling around.
All right, let's talk about meat.
Well, the United Nations is set to release a plan to call on the West to dramatically reduce its meat consumption. We've been talking about this a lot, how unelected globalists want to take away meat in the name of climate change. Here are new reports that say that we will see a real plan about this this weekend at the COP28 climate conference in Dubai.
Now, I will be there at the COP28 conference in Dubai.
Uh-huh. Will you eat meat when you attend?
I'm going to eat meat right in front of him. I'm going to walk right up to him with a steak.
You should wear Lady Gaga's meat dress.
I'm going to be there.
Eat it like Pizza the Hut.
When I show up at the COP28 conference with a giant steak, what are you guys going to do? Are you guys going to kick me out there in Dubai?
They will if you eat pork.
Yeah, I don't do that. I wouldn't be that rude, but I'll just walk up with a giant Big Mac.
A kebab.
Like, hey, where's that meat convention?
Okay, I don't want to poke fun at people who don't want to eat meat for ideological reasons. I want to talk about the globalist reasons and the
First of all, let me be clear.
Excuses.
Yeah, I was not poking fun at anyone for ideological reasons. I'm poking fun at the COP28 bigots and the globalists who are trying to tell us that we can't eat meat and lying to us about how it's causing climate increase in 2 degrees Celsius because of my eating a hamburger.
Right.
That's a lie.
I mean, I would venture to say that when they're done giving this report and they've had their meeting, they'll go out to a steak dinner. Right. Because they don't think about it that way. They don't think about it as in like not us. We mean everybody else.
Right. We just flew our private jets here. We just flew our private jets here, and we took our giant motorcade of diesel cars, right? But we're going to tell you that you can't drive a diesel car.
Right. Well, this is an attitude we should expect from the United Nations. Recall that Cristina Figueres, she's the climate campaigner for the United Nations climate change body. She once said that restaurants should treat carnivores the same way they treat smokers and ask them to eat outside. Remember this? We showed you this quote a couple months ago. How about restaurants in 10 to 15 years start treating carnivores in the same way that smokers are treated? If they want to eat meat, they can do it outside the restaurant. Snark added by me. Now, she's indicating that meat is a carcinogen, that people who eat it are irresponsible, and that going meatless is the only way to save the planet, although there's no data to back that up.
It doesn't matter. You can make shit up today. You can just say that it's carcinogenic.
You can make it up, and you can say that someone who's refuting it with facts is guilty of misinformation.
Right.
That's the
world we live in right now.
Well, let's look at some data that we do have right now, because there is no data that meat is a carcinogen. In fact, most studies that show that meat may be associated with cardiac events have never proven a causal link. And we're going to look at the impact of it as well. U.S. farmers only produce about 1.4% of global emissions. And as one farmer in Wyoming, we interviewed, I want to bring you this piece, recall, from Casey Atkinson. She's a rancher, cattle rancher in Wyoming. She says, cows are not responsible for methane emissions, and that is a lie. Listen.
You know, I think the first one, obviously, is we get hammered a lot from an environmental perspective, right? And methane emissions.
Yep.
Well, methane emissions from ruminant animals are not new. We had buffalo in this country for hundreds of years that were ruminant animals that were emitting the exact same methane that my cattle are emitting today. So my cattle aren't adding methane to the atmosphere. They're helping actually recycle it. Methane breaks down in 10 to 15 years. They graze plants, which encourages those plants to pull that carbon back out of the atmosphere and to store it underground, to spread out, to grow, to diversify, all of those good things. And so it's part of this cycle that has been ongoing for hundreds and hundreds of years. What is new is humans, right? And their carbon emissions, electricity, burning fossil fuels in transportation. We waste 40% of the food that we produce in this country. It ends up in a landfill. Well, when food rots in a landfill, it also creates methane. That is methane that didn't used to go into the atmosphere. And so, you know, understanding where these additional greenhouse gas emissions come from, and it's not my cows, I think would be one important thing. The University of Florida did this cool study where they found that you could eat beef for almost 40 years for the same environmental impact as using your cell phone for 1 year. And I was raised before cell phones were a thing. So I do know that we can, in fact, live without them, even though we don't think so.
All right. So should we stop using our cell phones then if we really want to reach the same emissions? No one's suggesting that, right? We have also shown you studies, and there are many. Here's just one showing that meat diets have about the same or better track record than plant-based diets. Take a look at this. This is all the different types of agricultural crops. And a lot of these are necessary to a plant-based diet because they're sort of, I guess, mushed up into things that we're using to simulate meat, right? Palm oil, soybean oil, rice, rapeseed oil, ground nuts, oatmeal. These are things that the plant-based diet is heavy on. And take a look at how piggish they are in land use, farming, animal feed, processing. These are all represented here in the different colors. And then retail, packaging. You know, these things you think, we've talked about this before. We talk about these meatless patties, meatless sausages, things like that. In fact, this chart shows that greenhouse gas emissions of plant-based crops shows that they are 5 to 25% higher than other agriculture, such as meat. And so these plant-based products have been shown to be grown at a mass level through large-scale industrial farming. Well, who do we know that owns a lot of farmland in the United States and is growing a lot of things, specifically seed oils to wrap around food? We've talked about this before, right? Industrial farming, heavily invested by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Huge crops for seeds and oils. So if there's no meat, we're gonna need all of these things that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are growing and selling, not just the crops themselves, but that biosynthetic wrap, that spray thing that we talked about. I didn't bring a picture, but maybe you recall.
Peel?
A peel is what it's called. Yeah, or peel or something like that. So that's interesting, right? Why doesn't the UN ask Bill Gates to lower his output in farming, in specifically agricultural farming? I don't know. Consider this statistic from Dr. Joseph Mercola. He's an osteopathic physician. He says industrial agriculture uses 75% of available farmland, yet produces just 30% of food consumed globally. Small biodiverse farms use 25% of land and provide 70% of our diet. If the industrial agriculture share continues to rise, it will eventually kill the whole planet and eliminate any possibility of growing food. Well, but that's exactly what the United Nations want, is for us to subsist on industrial agriculture, this sort of piggish farming of small things, right? And not pigs. Pigs is the wrong, I shouldn't have used that metaphor.
Maybe
because we're talking about the opposite of pigs.
Maybe somebody needs to step up and give them more money than Bill Gates does, and maybe they wouldn't take his plan so seriously.
Okay, who's going to do that?
Right. That's the problem. That's the problem. We need some billionaires who are champions of our cause here.
Is the Sultan of Brunei still alive? He at one point was the richest person in the world.
Let me text him and see.
Okay. Somebody let me know if he's available, because I think that at one point he was the richest person in the world. Maybe he could outpace Bill Gates in funding. Anyhow. Okay. So it's hard to argue with that. What he's warning about here is that this processed diet is part of an agenda to those who promote the Great Reset. And of course, what do you have to grow in such large quantities? Why do you have to grow them so much when you grow vegetables? Because you're a human. You know it's very hard to get full eating vegetables, right? Bugs.
That's why vegetarians eat all day.
Right. Well, I mean, and that also has to do with an insulin spike as well. So, yeah, we talked about bugs, the World Economic Forum's plan for replacing meat with insects, even though bugs are not proven to be healthy for humans. Philip himself is allergic to, what part of the insect are you allergic to, Philip? Chitin.
Yeah, I think everyone is allergic to it. Which is according to the doctors, I think everyone is allergic.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's research that everyone is allergic to that. I don't know much about farming bugs to make them into something that you eat.
That's good.
But I'm going to guess that it's probably pretty land and industry intensive. Like, you have to do it to a large amount.
It requires a lot of water.
Most likely a lot of land, a lot of processing, because again, it's like a little bit of corn. You have to mush it into something and process it a lot.
Well, we do know that it is
in order to get it into an edible form.
Yeah, we do know that it is incredibly intensive, and the amount of water that's used to make these meatless patties is the same level of trying to make these bug tacos or whatever the hell they're selling at convenience stores now.
Here in Portugal, we have at Continent the bug energy bars. I know that they've been through at least 80 processes of whatever through something in order to get into the form of an energy bar when it was last a cricket. Yeah. So I'm going to say that is mass quantity industrial farming. So why are we even trying to replace meat with these types of things when meat does not seem to be the problem? Is it because we're trying to get to zero emissions? That's what we're told, right? Even if that means starving. Here is Greenpeace co-founder, Dr. Patrick Moore, admitting that this plan is a death wish for about half of the global population if we really are going to try to get to net zero. Watch.
If we actually achieve net zero, at least 50% of the population would die of hunger and disease. And no doubt about it, because just one thing, which is nitrogen-based fertilizer, at least 50% of the population depends on nitrogen fertilizer for its existence today. There's no doubt about that. And there's people trying to ban it. And Netherlands and Sri Lanka have already made these kind of moves. And so it is truly a death wish in disguise. And the disguise is to save the Earth, which doesn't need saving particularly.
Thor Sparks just dropped a nice super chat, a $20 super chat. Says, recent studies show that a nutrient found in meat and dairy may play a role in fighting cancer. Transvasenic acid, TVA, enhances the ability of CD8 plus T cells, a type of immune cell, to infiltrate and destroy cancer cells. So it does the opposite of what they're telling us it does at the United Nations. Thank you, Thor.
Well, and my fear, is like, if they consider this an emergency, at some point, like I get all of my meat from a local farmer. I get raw milk and meat, and I know where it's coming from. I've seen the animals, but at some point, I fear those going away. And then because they don't want to create fear, they're going to hide what is in the products that they're giving us so that we won't even know what we're eating.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And of course, they're going to try to run out these small farmers. We see it in other countries. We see it in the Netherlands. We see it in Belgium. We see it in Germany. We're seeing it in the United States. Take away these small farms, and then where are you going to get this stuff? You're not. The answer is you're not. And you can go down to your local. You can go down to your local farm. You can get the dairy. You can get the meat. You know what you're getting, and they want it all to be, homogeneous, right? And so if you're gonna get anything, it's gonna be some like homogeneous meat from somewhere,
I suppose. Thor, I subscribe to a similar philosophy as yours. I am a fan of Paul Saladino, the doctor who wrote the book. What is it?
Carnivore Code. The Carnivore Code.
And so I am a meat forward eater, but I don't want to, discourage anyone who is a vegetarian for whatever reason that they choose. But you should not choose vegetarianism because you think it's better for the planet, because that just is not the case.
It's a lie.
Yeah, it just doesn't bear out. So, we're going for this meatless ideal because the planet is warming, according to the United Nations. But are we absolutely sure that the planet is warming? And are we absolutely sure that it's our fault? Human production of things, not just food. Well, here is Professor Ian Plimer in Australia. He's a geologist, professor of earth sciences at the University of Melbourne. He answers this question, and he has been canceled and attacked many times for doing so. So let's defer to him on these two questions. So first, are we actually sure that humans are to blame for the planet warming?
Can you please show me that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming? Now, it's a trick question. We'll come to that. They couldn't. This is a question that I've been asking scientists around the world for 25 years. I've asked journalists this question. I've asked politicians this question. It's no wonder I get cancelled, because no one can show from the scientific literature that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming.
Okay. Now let's get to question 2. Is the planet actually warming?
We have been cooling down for the last 4,000 years. So if people say, oh, the planet's warming, well, it's all about when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no change in temperature. If we look in the last 150 years, we've had 3 warming periods and 3 cooling periods with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, I wonder why it warms. I mean, 1850, now what happened then? Oh, yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Of course it's going to warm. So if you start taking measurements from 1850 in the Industrial Revolution, we have been warming. If you take measurements from the medieval warming, we've been cooling. We've cooled about 5 degrees since then. If you take measurements from the Roman warming, we've cooled about 5 degrees. So as soon as someone tells you, oh, it's warming, the reply you give is, since when?
I love that. It's one of my favorite quotes. Since when?
So, okay, you can stop eating meat if you want to. And the United Nations is going to make its case. But again, don't do it for the environment, especially given most of this data on plant-based meals. Do it for your own reasons. So let us know what you think of these numbers and this data in the chat.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the reasons are. If it's not for the environment and it's not for health, we know the data on the health side, and we know the data on the science or the planet side. So then is it just morality?
Well, some people, have
then it just comes down
the
to
idea of like the harming of animals. And but again, a lot of animals are harmed for the deforestation of plant-based diets too, when you're killing bunnies and mice and the habitat of insects and things like that in order to clear that out and it's also high in pesticides, these plant-based products as well, like really high in pesticides. So but if that's sort of how you then again, I don't want to down on anybody who's a vegetarian, but then if you're like, well, the one cow wasn't killed, but it's a trade-off and you have to eat how you feel. So go ahead.
I was going to say, those people need to read The Secret Life of Trees so that they understand that even those plants communicate and have systems.
Yeah. That's the book I couldn't think of. Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to bring that up. The Secret Life of Trees. If you think, oh, they don't have any feelings, I'm just going to eat. I'm going to cut down trees. I'm going to cut down and eat. That's going to be my diet. They don't have any feelings. Read that book.
Yeah.
It'll change. You'd be like, all right, that's it. I'm just not eating anything.
Yeah.
It's going to have water. That's all I'm going to have.
I read this great book that I talked about, The Dorito Effect, and they studied moths to try and see if they could breed a moth that was resistant to these cotton plants. And so they were studying the moth, and they put the moth in with a cotton plant, and they realized that the caterpillar, was not eating the plant, even though it was in the same cage. And they're like, you love this. Why won't you eat this? And they couldn't figure it out until they cut the leaf of the plant. And then the caterpillar was all about it and started munching down. Or actually, no, it was the wasp. The wasp was trying to find the caterpillar and would not eat the caterpillar that was in the leaves until the leaves were cut, because a wasp can't find a caterpillar when it's flying really high. The plant signals to the wasp. They can smell it, and they sort of communicate like, hey, something's eating me. Come down and take care of it. So the plant communicates all the way up into the air with the wasp. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I know. When you told me that from the book, I was like, what?
And so they could get the wasp to eat that plant or to come to the plant if they cut the leaves, because then the plant was like, rah, like some kind of silent scream. So yes, absolutely, plants have an energy to them as well.
So I guess if you're vegan for moral reasons, you're going to be drinking water, and that's going to be it from now on.
Well, whatever. Okay.
I'm no vegan, but I eat the hell out of some vegetables because I'm a big fan of vegetables. I actually prefer vegetables to me. I mean, I do eat meat, but I'll eat raw vegetables all day long. That's just my favorite thing.
You're a killer.
And can I make a quick correction? It's The Hidden Life of Trees. Sorry about that.
The Hidden Life of Trees.
There is a Secret Life of Trees, but that's a different one. That's too bright.
Babu says Clayton doesn't look interested in that story. No, I am fascinated by that story. I was the one that brought it up. And when she told me that story, she told me, because we're married, I've heard that story before. So she told me that over coffee. So I've known that story. And Sammy says, why'd you guys stop talking about Palestine? We didn't. We have been covering that. There's a ceasefire right now, and we actually covered it last night on the show, and we're covering it tomorrow on the show. So we haven't stopped talking about Palestine, just so you know. Yeah. I don't know if you do know that there's a ceasefire right now. They've been exchanging hostages. In fact, in our newsletter today, we did a whole story about Palestine and the hostage shuffle. It's interesting how I'll talk about Palestine. It is interesting how the Western media describes those that Israel has been holding as prisoners, while the individuals that Hamas has been holding are called hostages. It's just semantics. I'm just curious how the Western media plays these things out. Anyway, I just figured I'd call that out, and just as a thought point here. What do you guys think about that? Let us know in the chat.
And I think we have to call it what they've been calling it, which is not a ceasefire, but a humanitarian pause.
Oh, humanitarian.
It's how it's being.
It's all about the human beings. We care about humans suddenly.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be clear about that. Good. Yeah, we'll be back on that tomorrow as we're going to talk more deeply about the IDF and the Israeli Defense Forces on that story. And we'll see what happens overnight as well. Because tomorrow, by the way, the ceasefire is supposed to be done, this humanitarian pause, as Colonel McGregor has said, he believes that this is the beginning of the end. I mean, if Israel continues this massive barrage, Israel is shooting itself in the foot. Netanyahu is done. This could be the end of Israel if it continues down this path. So
it's not just as easy. I just get this image of Wayne's World where they're like, game on, like game on now.
Like it's just that
like,
straightforward in black and white.
Here we go. Let's pick up the bombs again.
Yeah.
Whereas the
like,
Israeli...
It's like the Life of Brian when they were fighting and then the guards go by. And they all stop, and then when they get done, it's like, okay, where were you? It's like, you were about to punch me here, and he's like, oh yeah. So it's like, that's gonna be like that, like no, you were about to shoot me. Yeah, okay, all right, game on.
Yeah, let's get back to the propaganda. Let's start funneling out the propaganda again. We took 5 days off for Thanksgiving, and let's get back to it now. By the way, we cover 5 stories here on the show every night. There's thousands of stories every day that we rake through and look at and have to make a decision on. There's lots of stuff that we have to say, we just don't have time for it in the show today. So, but anyway, we are going to cover Trudeau. We're going to cover Ukraine and the Ukraine war in just a moment, and how the Trudeau government wants Canadians to funnel billions more to Ukraine. Are you guys okay with that up in Canada? A new poll just out this afternoon shows that 3 out of 4 Canadians want Trudeau out, gone. And but he says he's sticking around because he's a man of the people, I guess. So we'll get to that story in a moment. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Factor.
Right, because the holidays are upon us. You might be looking for nutritious and convenient meals to keep you energized on jam-packed days. That's why you should look into Factor. They're America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. They can help you fuel up fast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all of your holiday to-dos. If you're too busy to cook, but you want to make sure you're eating well, with Factor, you can skip the extra trip to the grocery store and all the chopping and prepping and cleaning while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality that you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. All you have to do is heat them and enjoy. So skip the stress of meal prep over the holidays with Factor. Choose from over 35 plus weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that didn't come out easily. That support a healthy lifestyle and that will meet all your meal preferences. So whether you're a meat eater, you are vegetarian, vegan, you can choose meals that you like. You also can add breakfast items like apple cinnamon pancakes, bacon and cheddar egg bites, potato, bacon, and egg breakfast skillet. I say yes to all of those things. So head on over to factormeals.com/redacted50 and use code redacted50 to get 50% off. That's code redacted50 at factormeals.com/redacted50 to get 50% off.
Yeah, people are saying, oh, you forgot about India. Yes, we could have covered India tonight. We could have also covered Japan. Japan just held a massive demonstration saying hail to the emperor, basically get not get immigrants out, but
slow down immigration.
In Japan.
Japan is for the Japanese. Yeah,
we covered in depth Ireland last night from multiple angles. So we don't try to just focus on one topic here. We also covered
Let's just start doing 24-hour news. Let's just stay on 24 hours.
Yeah, and let's do it the way that like Fox and CNN and all those guys do it, where they cover 3 stories in 24 hours, but they just keep repeating themselves for 24 hours basically.
Yeah.
We need our own airplane story, that missing airplane that we can cover for like 6 months, just day after day, same thing.
Yeah.
That would leave us no time to study, which may explain why network news is not studied.
Right.
They do not study.
They don't read books.
You don't need to study. You just have a different pilot on every night to talk about. Like every time you do the segment, you just get a different pilot to come on and say like, yeah, we don't know where it's at.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, great, thank you, pilot. Like.
All right, let's talk about the royal baby, shall we? The royals. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What? No, I am excited to talk about it. Okay. Well, King Charles is the racist we've been trying to figure out all along. He was outed as the racist royal for wondering what his grandchild would look like from his mixed race daughter-in-law. This comes from the new book about the royals called Endgame from this seemingly quite obnoxious guy, Omid Scobie. A now tell-all book reveals that the royal family member who was previously unnamed, but now we pretty much can surmise who it was, from this Meghan Markle Oprah interview. Now, remember, this was late 2021 after Megxit, when Harry and Meghan quit the royal family and then moved to the U.S. And she indicated here that the royal family was racist against her unborn child while Prince Archie was still a fetus. Watch.
All around this same time. So we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Okay, now why are we covering this? Because this is a show about geopolitics. Who cares about the royal family? The reason I want to cover this is because I find it to be the cheapest kind of race baiting, and the media loves it. Oh, the royals are racist. Meghan Markle's the victim. We told you white people are racist. Well, this new tell-all book was pulled from the shelves because it accidentally named the actual name of the royal person who said this, who said, I wonder what color the baby's skin will be. The author is saying it was a translation error that made it into only the Dutch version that was sold in the Netherlands. The English version is still on the shelves because it didn't have a name. Now, that's interesting. If you write a book and you write a sentence that somebody said this to Meghan Markle and then they corresponded about it later, how does that get translated in the Dutch version with King Charles said this? How? Like, how does a pronoun get translated into a name if he says it was just a translation error? That's not how that works. Here is the version that I could...
Isn't the Dutch for someone, King Charles?
Oh.
Isn't that their actual word for it?
Maybe the Dutch think everybody's royal?
I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. That could be it. I don't speak Dutch.
There's no other reasonable explanation for how King Charles would be named in one version, but he says he never actually wrote down the name. I call foul on that. Now, here's the translated version of the excerpt that's circulating online. The media is pretending that they don't know who it is, but it says, this is from the book, that during their conversation with Oprah, both Harry and Meghan declined to say who was present in that conversation. A representative for the couple only wanted to say that it was not the Queen or Prince Philip. And she had said, I think that would be very damaging to them. But in those private letters, an identity was revealed and confirmed that it was Charles. The king, sources say, wanted to respond to make clear to Meghan there was no ill will or bias when he spoke about it. He wanted to clarify something he felt was very important. So, okay, that's a name. Charles is written. I don't think Charles is a pronoun for him, but I don't speak Dutch. Here is the media pretending that they don't know, and then the author sort of indicating that it was Charles.
Are you able to share the two names that you know of?
Unfortunately, those are two names that I have to keep to myself for now. But I do wonder if that might change over the future. It does seem that Harry and Meghan have decided to put that to rest.
Do you think that we'll ever find out who that person or who those people are that allegedly made these comments?
The only way that we would ever find out is if a member of the royal family directly involved chose to say so on the record. We won't have any confirmation. That won't gain any further traction unless that happens.
Queen Elizabeth releasing a statement at the time saying the issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. And Prince William asserting we are very much not a racist family. Scobie claims that Meghan and Charles corresponded about the incident. And ultimately the Sussexes, he writes, still keep him in the loop on their family life, sending new photos of the children.
We know from sources that Charles was horrified that that's how Meghan felt those conversations were. and that he wanted to sort of, as a representative of the family, have that conversation with her.
Okay. So they sort of indicate that there's a second person now. They don't say who it is. They said in this book it's not the queen, but it's some kind of her. So two things here. This accidental naming of the racist royal was clearly not an accident. The translator doesn't even pull the name of that's bullcrap. And again, this is a shameless race narrative. Am I saying Charles is not a racist? I don't know. Am I saying that maybe he's been racist in the past? Again, I don't know. I don't read royal biographies to know that. I'm not saying he is or he's not racist. What I am saying, that wondering what your mixed race grandchild will look like is not a racist thing to do. Meghan Markle presented this as probably this is the reason that my unborn child will not have titles or security, because these two conversations happened during my pregnancy. She's extrapolating to the worst possible intention, and Oprah just sort of lets her do it. If you watch Oprah's response, which we're not going to play it again, but if you watch Oprah's response to her, she just says, well, who had that conversation? Instead of like, oh, are you sure that those things were related? Or maybe that's just normal musing of like, you have curly hair, he has red hair. Will the baby have red hair or curly hair? You know, so this racism could be just a grandpa wondering what the physical traits of the new baby will be like. And then does that make him a bigot to say like, oh, you're half black and half white, so I wonder if the baby will be dark like you, or, you know, white like Harry and his Diana's horse trainer.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, if my dad would have asked this question, he would have been like, oh, you know, because Natalie is like part Latin, Hawaiian, like, is the child going to look like, you know, have Clayton skin, you know, like beautiful olive skin like Clayton, or is it going to look like, you know,
well, yeah,
little Hawaiian lady over here?
Well, my mom said when I was pregnant
and
with
would that be
first,
racist?
Well, I don't know. My mom said when I was pregnant with our first, I hope the baby doesn't have Clayton's eyebrows. And is that racist? Because she didn't want
it's
him
racist
to have...
against my eyebrows.
And, you know, again, I think that we're calling out racism. This is what's called orchestrated victimhood, right? Is that she's the victim because someone only just made it an illusion, a reference, a passing reference to her race. So why does she do this, do you think? I'm not sure that it's some kind of revenge, because I'm sure it sucks to live with your in-laws and they tell you what to do all the time, but she got out of there, right? So why does she need to hit back now? Does she think that speaking about these microaggressions, that she calls them, perhaps helps other people deal with racism? I'm going to say it doesn't. In fact, it only spreads the idea of microaggressions as racism, and that is not helpful. I think what she's doing here is emphasizing victimhood in order to qualify herself as someone who should speak on an international stage. This is called the Victimhood Olympics. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
It's like the more miserable your experience, the more status you would have. Now, here in a recent book is what Susan Nyman says about this in the book Left is Not Woke. She says that orchestrated victimhood is perfidious because it mocks the victims of real racist attacks. But I'm less interested now in the consequences than in the fact that they're even possible at all. What was recently a stigma has become a source of standing. Like, oh, I've really been through it. People treat me like crap. I know life because I've been the victim of racism. What painful origins and persecution were once acknowledged, as in Frederick Douglass's narrative, the pain was a prelude to overcoming it. Prevailing over victimhood, as Douglass did, could be a source of pride. Victimhood itself was not. The rash of contemporaries inventing worse histories than they experienced is something new. That's how I feel about that this is orchestrated victimhood. And there's no need to use this to hit at Prince Charles. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, when I watched the White House Task Force for Online Hate and Abuse, they referred to everyone who had experienced some kind of online hate or whatever as survivors.
Oh,
as if they had survived a war.
Right. Oh, someone left a negative Twitter comment. Are you okay? Did you survive?
You survived that?
Wow. How did you?
Like, it's the same, it's that the kind of thinking.
Oh
it's
my God.
Yeah.
The victimhood. Yeah, the left victimhood.
Right. And, you know, like Clayton mentioned, my mom is Hawaiian and Spanish. And so when we were having babies, you know, and our babies were born, my mom's like, oh, my grandbabies, they're so white, because she comes from darker skin cultures. And so is that racist for her to say my grandbabies are white? She's pointing out how they're not like me. She's pointing out the difference in their skin, right?
Yeah.
And so I never thought that made us any kind of victimhood or victims to point out the differences. Like, it's just a natural thing to say.
But if you would have went on Oprah and presented it that way,
right?
You know, Oprah would have said, "What?
Yeah.
What? You are a victim."
It's just
Megan.
so natural to talk about what babies will look like when you mix two different, you know, genetic histories. I just don't understand how this is racism and it's getting national headlines. So let us know what you think of that.
All right, we got one more story to get to tonight. I want to talk about Ukraine. We're going to talk about Justin Trudeau, and we're going to talk about the billions that they want to continue to send to Ukraine up in Canada, even though a new poll shows that 3 out of 4 Canadians now say they want Trudeau out of there. Is he going to survive? He is pandering left and right. Let us know what's going to happen to these globalists. So we're going to get to that story in just a moment. But first, hey, gold is surging. I don't know if you've been paying attention to gold prices. Silver prices have been skyrocketing. And it's all because right now it looks like the Fed is done cutting rates, or done increasing rates and putting rates up higher right now. And that means, of course, that people want to be in precious metals. Like Natalie and I have certainly made big investments over the past few weeks into precious metals, in more specifically into silver, because silver prices are so great right now, really half of their all-time high. So silver as a commodity continues to be in such high demand, gold as well, but silver as a commodity and as currency. So right now, our friends over at Lear Capital can help you get set up buying precious metals. These are the guys that you want to check out, because they can send you gold coins, gold bars, all of that right to your house. So you can keep it in your safe, you can keep it in your gun safe, or you can have it stored off-site in a secure, protected facility. That's what we do. We don't keep it in our house, we keep it off-site. And so we have it protected 24/7, and that's a great way to make sure that your gold is monitored. And actually, they'll even do like quarterly checkups. I think we just got ours. They do an audit of your gold and silver like every quarter or whatever and all that. It's really interesting how they do that. So if you're interested in investing in gold at Lear, they will help you start purchasing precious metals or converting part of your IRA or your 401k into a gold and silver IRA. Call Lear Capital today. Call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557, and get your free gold and silver investor guide. Go to LearRedacted.com, and guess what? You can receive up to $15,000 in free bonus metals as well with a qualified purchase. So they're fantastic. They will give you a free gold investor's guide. You can learn about it. You can read about it on your own, see if it's a fit for you, and they'll even talk to you on the phone. So when you call their 800 number, just say, hey, I heard about you guys on Redacted. I've been thinking about buying gold and silver for a while. Can you tell me more about it? They'd love to talk with you. They're great people over there. 1-800-613-3557. They are true patriots also. They stand for American values, and they stand for freedom. And they are actually one of the companies featured in publicsquare.com as well. So you can stand by them. 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com. To Canada now, where Justin Trudeau is pointing the fingers at conservatives once again, conservative MAGA conservatives and Tucker Carlson, for the way that the Canadians are now moving away from Ukraine. I guess a sabotaged Ukraine free trade deal is now on the scrap heap of history, all thanks to MAGA conservatives and Tucker Carlson. Justin Trudeau is at it once again. We wanted to bring in David Creighton from Ottawa, Canada, to unpack all of this. So this free trade deal, David, with Ukraine was supposed to make things, I guess, easier for the flow of goods to travel between Ukraine and Canada, which I'm surprised it's not already flowing as easily as that. But it's now the problem of MAGA conservatives for torpedoing this deal. Can you explain what's going on here?
Yes, it's quite fascinating because we already have a free trade deal with Ukraine. It's called giving them billions of dollars and all of the armaments and all the tanks we have in our inventory. That's the kind of free trade deal we have with Ukraine. But Trudeau wanted another free trade agreement, and you wonder about the timing here. This is a regime that is teetering on the brink of disaster, catastrophe, and collapse. And do you really think anybody in Ukraine is worried about a free trade agreement with Canada? Probably not. But Trudeau wanted all party support for this free trade agreement, which incidentally he inserted a carbon tax amendment to, which he routinely does to all trade agreements with other countries. If they want to sign, they have to agree to this provision for LGBTQ rights or for gender ideology teaching in schools or for carbon tax. So the Conservatives objected to this on the principle of Ukraine or anybody doesn't need another carbon tax. But really what's going on here behind the scenes is there are a lot of conservative people in the base, the grassroots, who are saying enough of the billions of dollars we are sending to Ukraine. You've given them our last Leopard tank. The army is saying we don't have any inventory left. You've given it all away. We can't afford it. And more Canadians are waking up to the fact that Zelensky is shoveling all the money into private bank accounts along with the other high-level politicians, along with the other oligarchs. And as soon as this war is over, they're going to be bolting the country for warmer climes and they hope safer climes. But they want to get out of there as soon as possible. And with the billions that Canada, NATO countries, and mostly the United States has given them with no strings attached. So this free trade agreement, which will probably go through, will mean nothing. It's a farce because Ukraine is in no position to even honor a free trade agreement. It's a country nearing collapse. And thank God the Conservatives found some spine on this finally to say enough is enough. We're not going to give another treaty away, more billions of dollars to Ukraine. They're finally developing some resistance to this. And it's high time because Trudeau likes to pretend all Canadians are united in their solidarity with Ukraine, and it will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes. And I have asked several times, well, how long is it going to take until every last Ukrainian male and female is dead on the battlefield? Until there's not a single scrap of metal left to make an arm? I don't know what they are looking at except catastrophe here.
Well, we've seen Polish videos on the Polish border, the Ukrainian border, where Polish truckers are blocking goods to flowing into Ukraine. One video has gone viral over the past 24 hours showing luxury cars, big truck beds of luxury cars flowing into Ukraine, but they're stopped at the border. And Poles are saying, wait a minute, I thought this was a corridor that was supposed to be sending arms and weaponry and to specifically help Ukraine in its hour of need. Why do they need luxury cars? Poles are saying. And so to your point, Canada has already sent billions of dollars into Ukraine and weapons, and the United States has continued to do this. What more could they possibly need? I'm going to read a quote, though, from Justin Trudeau, who says the real story of the rise of the real story is the rise of a right-wing American MAGA-influenced thinking that has made Canadian conservatives, who used to be among the strongest defenders of Ukraine, I'll admit it, turn their backs on something Ukraine needs in its hour of need. So he's really he's really using some talking points straight out of the Biden handbook, which is MAGA extremists, American MAGA extremists. This is the problem. And they're even taking potshots at Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson apparently is to blame too in this hour of need for Ukraine. Can you explain that part of the story?
Well, that's because Trudeau, every time he's desperate, and he's desperate not just to stay as prime minister, but to stay as the leader of the Liberal Party. He's facing a caucus revolt because so many MPs are saying, we're finished. We're annihilated in the next election if you stay there, Justin Trudeau. So he's desperate. So he's pulling out the MAGA boogeyman, which he has occasionally done. And for the woke left in Canada, or for the real stalwart Trudeau supporters, there's nothing more evil than MAGA and Donald Trump. And now it appears Tucker Carlson has joined this triumvirate of evil personalities because Kingston Liberal MP Mark Garretson joined the government House leader at a news conference to bemoan the fact that Tucker Carlson's writing talking points for the Conservative Party of Canada now, and is actively encouraging Canadians to turn their back against Ukraine. And here we have more desperation. But we know that the Liberals are very upset that Tucker is coming to Calgary in January to interview the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith. We know that they have almost a paranoid fear of Tucker Carlson, that Justin Trudeau has a incredible fear of Tucker Carlson. For whatever reason that is, it's almost bizarre. But he now, the Liberals are blaming everything unseemly in their eyes on MAGA Republicans, Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson. And I find this to be the politics of desperation. And what kills me is that here is Trudeau again accusing his detractors of exercising extreme right-wing politics. Sorry, Ukraine is the one with a neo-Nazi battalion called the Azov Battalion. Trudeau was the one who sanctioned and invited a former Waffen-SS Nazi to come to the House of Commons to hear Zelensky speak. Trudeau was the one who did that. Trudeau was the one who sanctioned 2 standing ovations for this guy. And just like he did with the Freedom Convoy, where he said, these guys are a bunch of extremists on the fringe. They're racist, they're misogynistic, and you know what? They're Nazis too. Because I think I saw a Nazi flag on the first day. So they're all Nazis. So Trudeau, once again, is using the politics of distraction and detraction. He's calling his enemies what he is. He's projecting his faults, his authoritarian ideas, his authoritarian values on his opponents. So everybody out there is against him is an extremist, right-wing, crazy man. Sorry, you're the one who's running your government like a fascist government.
Yeah. Well, maybe this fair trade deal could go through so Zelensky could get a few more yachts and, as you point out, a few more diamonds for his wife, because while Americans suffer, while Canadians suffer right now, Zelensky needs more wealth, more money flowing into his pockets. David Creighton, great to see you. Thank you so much as you prepare for a big snowstorm up there. Also watching the trucker convoy trial, which is set to return as well. And hopefully you can give us some updates on that, because the defense is about to have their turn, right?
Yes. And finally, after, my God, 2 months of the prosecution showing videos that were actually favorable to Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, and people scratching their heads wondering, I don't understand the point of all this. The defense is going to get up and I think absolutely slice the prosecution in 5 or 6 pieces, because they have no case. The prosecution has no case. They're putting these 2 people whose resources are extremely limited, who are surviving on fundraising, into hell. And that's the whole point of this. They know they're not guilty of any kind of sedition, of any kind of mischief, of any kind of insurrection, but they're putting them through hell. So anybody else who wants to protest against the Trudeau government is going to think twice about the legal cost and about the humiliation and about going through a trial that should have been over in 48 hours. That's going to go 3-4 months. And that's what this is all about.
Taking a play right out of the January 6th playbook, and going after people that don't deserve it. David Creighton, great to see you. We'll have dispatches from the trial here over the next few days. We appreciate it. Thanks from Canada, as always, David.
Thank you so much, Clayton.
And thanks, David. And I just want to say thanks to all of you for being a part of our show here and subscribing. It's free to subscribe. To follow us on Twitter or Rumble or on YouTube, wherever you guys do subscribe. I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, we don't have all the answers here, but we are seeking the truth together, and we are questioning everything together. So thank you guys for being a part of our community. Again, the show is totally free, Monday through Thursday. Thank you for being here live with us. We also have a Plus Club. We have our Redacted Plus Club. If you would like to kind of go above and beyond and support independent journalism, we are supported by you, the viewer. So You can come over to redacted.inc and you can click on the community button there and join our Plus Club. And like I said, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support what we do here, get access to exclusive content, interviews, live streams, all of that in our community. Plus, we just have a great locals community of viewers. So it's a really great group of people. We were hanging out just a few weeks ago doing a live stream with just our community members, and it was a lot of fun just to be able to kick back and talk with you guys, and had a great night as we were getting new studio stuff set up and just hanging out with the group. So if you'd like to join our Plus Club, please come on over. Redacted.inc is the place to go. But like I said, the show is totally free, so you don't have to pay anything. But you can support us if you'd like in that extra way. We will be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow, everyone.